Have you ever been upset about something and someone tells you, calm down, or it's not a big deal? That's probably one of the worst things you can hear when you're already struggling. And I don't think it ever really works. Because the truth is, it might not be a big deal to you, but it might be a big deal to me. So, this is the same approach where we need to have some empathy for our students when we teach problem solving. For example, a student might be having a big reaction to something that seems very small, like a broken pencil. It might sound just like a minor thing, but what if we don't know, but that pencil was given to this person by a special friend before they moved away? Or maybe they got it as a gift from a place that they won't go again. Now, suddenly, that small problem carries a lot more weight. And that's why I always say this when teaching kids about emotional regulation and social problem solving. All feelings are valid, and no one, not even a trusted adult, gets to tell somebody else how they should feel or how big their problem is. This is where I think we can do things a little bit differently than the traditional way when we teach the size of the problem. So, a lot of us use tools like 5 point scales or frameworks like zones of regulation, and those have value. I do take a slightly different approach in my social skills groups. When I teach problem solving skills to kids, especially we're working on self regulation, emotional intelligence, and learning to manage social conflict, I introduce a reflective 5 point scale. So instead of measuring only the emotion or intensity of by the scale, I really want to help the kids self-reflect on that problem to try to get a little bit more objective about what that problem is and what they need to solve that problem. So it starts with all good because sometimes something might feel off for just momentarily, but it doesn't really require support or intervention. For example, maybe someone bumped into you in line and you're briefly annoyed, but you're able to shake it off and move on. You don't need to do anything about it. That's an all good moment. But as we go up the scale, the response changes. Sometimes the problem is something you can handle on your own, maybe with a quick strategy that you have learned. And other times you might need advice, support, or if it's an emergency or you're completely overwhelmed, you just might need somebody to take over. And it's really important that kids can recognize when they need help and that they can identify to whom they could go to for help. So the key is the scale isn't telling kids what category their problem should fall under. It's just helping them reflect and to decide for themselves. So it's about teaching them the skills to look at a situation a little bit more objectively. We're not going to minimize their feelings. We're actually going to empower them and give them the confidence to move from just like blind reactions to more of a resolution. That's the kind of emotional intelligence we want to see in our students. In my groups, after we go through the scale and talk about the different levels, I use real life social scenarios for practice. So I have a bunch written out that are very applicable to their situation because I know them very well or I know the schools. You can also have them write out different situations. That's always fun. So the kids I cut them out, put them on the table, and they pick one up, they read it, and then they share what kind of support they would need for that. So they basically categorize it under the scale. So if it's something that's all good or something they need help with or something that's an emergency, okay, that's just something that we want them to think about and to share and then to also have a discussion about it. And if my categorization of a problem may not be what you categorize it as, and that's great. That's totally fine. This is not a group or this shouldn't be an activity where we want everyone to categorize each problem, each situation the same way. We're all different. We experience things differently. We have different sensory reactions to things. So we want kids to be able to recognize that problem, understand what they need to solve that problem. And it's really nice if they're able to open up and share about what they would do. This is where it's really important for the group to be very non-judgmental and just open. Just like, okay, I would need a friend to come with me to solve this problem. Another person might say, like, that would be no big deal for me. I wouldn't even, it would be an all good. And then you can kind of talk about why, it has to do with our lived experience. So it's all about like really taking that perspective, having some empathy for one another, and doing some critical thinking about how we're going to solve problems. So that's all part of social emotional learning for kids. If you're actually looking for a structured way to introduce this, I do have a resource on Teachers Pay Teachers called Size of the Problem. I can link it in the description. You can check it out. I use it with my kids. It works really well. Or just from what I'm teaching you right now, just make your own and try it out with your students and have that honest, open discussion. That's really the most important thing to do with your group, is just create that non-judgmental, open discussion and teach them that yes, they have the power. We want to build them up to have the self-confidence to solve their problems, even if that means enlisting support of people in their environment. So hope you enjoy it and have fun in your next group and when you're working with kids.